Before I get into the present, though, I just want to share a little something that's a really big something. Back last year, I guess it would have been somewhere around April, maybe May. I do believe it was May. A really big documentary film came out on Morgellons disease called Skin Deep, The Battle Over Morgellons. This was produced by a famous filmmaker, Pi Ware, P-I-W-A-R-E, Emmy Award-winning filmmaker. And there was a public release of this video, of this feature-length film, which you should really check out. It'll give you a background on how bad the discrimination is against all Morgellons disease patients. You'll get to see video footage from the yearly conferences, or one of them in particular. And you'll see how horrible it is for Morgellons disease patients to have a doctor standing right there in front of you saying, "I don't believe you. I think these people are just a bit crazy. Sure, they're suffering, but there's nothing wrong with them." And by the way, Kelly Pickens, in that video where that doctor is saying this to her, she killed herself. She was one of the top voices for Morgellons disease advocacy for years and years and years. I think a decade. She had Morgellons disease before I even had it back in 2009, and she's been part of these support groups and outspoken voices on Morgellons disease. She's dead now. All she wanted was treatment for her symptoms of Morgellons disease, a true infectious disease which causes multi-system symptoms of illness. Of course, unique to only Morgellons disease, which is not found in any other disease in the world, is the presence of microscopic fibers growing throughout your skin from head to toe. They can be seen highly concentrated in the skin lesions, which is the second most outstanding symptom of Morgellons disease. So, this is where I just throw in to let you know that the suicide rate of Morgellons disease patients is 800 times higher than the general population. And I'm letting the world know this. So when the movie Skin Deep came out, they were doing these really great interviews with the head of the world's largest Morgellons disease foundation, the Charles E. Holman Morgellons Disease Foundation, and her name is Cindy Casey, an excellent advocate and leader in the world of Morgellons disease advocacy. The filmmaker was hosting all of these interviews, and the great thing is alongside the interview, there was the column where you could chat and you could ask questions, and people watching this interview could actually vote on the questions and rate them. And this was one of the first times in over a decade of suffering over a decade of suffering that I became very outspoken. And I was just hammering them with questions because I had so many questions. And Cindy Casey even said in one of her comments, "Hey Lance, maybe you should do some interviews." Well, lo and behold, very soon after, I suddenly found myself as a volunteer with the Charles E. Holman Morgellons Disease Foundation, and suddenly I was managing and operating their Twitter account. This would have been starting in May of 2020. I'm proud of this because all I want to do is help. All I want to do is help get Morgellons disease validated. A disease which, if any doctor wants to know about this disease, all they have to do is take a handheld microscope and point it at my skin and move it around, and eventually they're going to see fibers, microscopic fibers that are growing out of my skin. That's what Morgellons disease is, apart from the multi-system symptoms of illness which are caused by the underlying bacterial infection responsible for causing Morgellons disease. I don't want to talk about that too much because people don't like to say what Morgellons disease is or is not. All I can tell you is my own personal story. And furthermore, I happen to be patient 6 in one of the official peer-reviewed scientific studies on Morgellons disease. The title is Exploring the Association between Morgellons disease and Lyme disease. This scientific study was published in 2015, and it was a landmark study with 25 Morgellons disease patients, all testing positive for Lyme disease. Other studies before then and since then have associated the Lyme disease bacterial infection with Borrelia as being an associated factor to Morgellons disease. That's me dancing lightly around the claim that Morgellons disease, I'll take that as a beautiful sign. A bald eagle just flew overhead with its baby chicks. Wow. Can I just comment personally? I'm pretty tense making these videos. It's very uncomfortable to me, and I'm doing it for the mission. I'm a very private, personal person, whatever that means. It just means it's unusual for me to go public and to talk about this. I didn't want anybody in the world to know I had Morgellons disease. I didn't want to have Morgellons disease. I just wanted it to be over. I just wanted to get a test. I wanted treatment. I wanted the official diagnosis. And I wanted to have improved health so I could continue going on living my life as I did before without this devastating illness. I know I'm jumping around, so I'll just say that I continue to do advocacy efforts on a daily basis. It includes the Charles E. Holman Morgellons Disease Foundation operating their Twitter account, and it includes recent efforts, which I'd like to draw attention to. This is the third video today, and in my first and second videos, I've posted some pretty big material. My first video, I provided a whole background, but the main part of it was declaring a global pandemic related to Morgellons disease and reading my official letter to the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau, Canada's Prime Minister, where I called upon the office of the Prime Minister of Canada for an emergency action response for Morgellons disease. I sent that letter on May 21st of this year, 2021, and I'm very happy to announce that on June 1st, I got a reply from that letter. I was astonished because I expected the same abusive treatment by the government that Morgellons disease patients have suffered ever since Morgellons disease came out, which is just to be ignored or to be dismissed. In this case, I got a response from the Office of the Prime Minister indicating that they were taking this matter very seriously, in such that they carefully reviewed the contents of my communication, and they took it so seriously that they forwarded this matter to the highest healthcare authority of Canada, the Minister of Health of Canada. This is historic, the fact that this has happened. Why? Because I supplied them with a binder, organized, 8 chapters, over 160 pages of documentation, scientific reports, and everything you could imagine that would validate Morgellons disease, of which no human being, I don't care if you've got your fancy titles that you've worked hard for decades to get in healthcare, I don't care if you're the top CDC official, you can no longer deny that Morgellons disease exists. Morgellons disease is a physical disease characterized most especially by the microscopic fibers that grow beneath unbroken human skin, and that can be seen in the lesions with a magnified scope of bare minimum 20 times magnification, and you can see these fibers coming out of the skin. What this means is Morgellons will be validated. I want anybody watching this video to have hope and faith that there's no way the government can continue to deny this. The question is not if they will validate Morgellons disease, the question is when. And considering that this is a global pandemic, you would expect the government to take this matter very seriously, especially given all the mistakes that they made with the coronavirus in the beginning, that they're still paying for, because now the entire countries all over the world had to be shut down because it wasn't properly managed. Well, 20 years later, Morgellons disease, I'm sending a letter to the Prime Minister's office saying, we need help here. This is a global pandemic. People are suffering. People are killing themselves, and it's wrong. And all that because of a failure of the healthcare authorities who are here to protect us. The CDC in particular, and the Minister of Health of Canada in particular, and all the ministries of health throughout Canada, throughout all the provinces and territories and nations. First Nations, nations. Where does this leave me today? Well, I'm excited to announce that my fellow friends across the border, of which there is no separation because we all have Morgellons disease, Brittany in particular has sent a letter to the US President Joe Biden. This letter is now at the White House, and they will be examining the contents of this letter, and they will be in the same position where they can no longer deny Morgellons disease exists. They will be able to recognize that the CDC produced a corrupted study in which they didn't even have any Morgellons disease patients in their study on Morgellons disease patients. And this is pointed out by none other than Dr. Randy Wymore of the Oklahoma State University Center for the Investigation of Morgellons disease. It tells you a lot about what the CDC did related to the Morgellons disease study. This is now going to be under the magnifying glass of governments. The United States government, the Canadian government, and soon to catch on, every government throughout the world of every country and every nation. I think this would be a good time to end the video, but what I really want to leave you with, the message, is hope for all Morgellons disease patients, that this disease will be validated, and someday soon, you're going to be able to walk into a doctor's office, you're going to be able to walk into a hospital, and you're going to be able to describe the symptoms you experience, and right away, they're going to have the first thing on their mind that you might have Morgellons disease. All they have to do, they don't even have to take a blood test, a biopsy, nothing. They just have to take a small plastic handheld microscope that costs $10, give or take, point it at your skin, move it around, and eventually, if you have Morgellons disease, they are going to see these microscopic fibers, black, red, white, blue, growing out of your skin. You have Morgellons disease. You will be diagnosed. You will be prescribed proper treatment for Morgellons disease, for the underlying bacterial infection which causes Morgellons disease, and with the treatment, with the proper treatment, with the right amount of treatment over the right amount of time, your symptoms will improve. Hopefully you'll be cured, because right now there is no cure. And then after that, you'll be able to go back on living your life. That's the message of hope I want to bring to all Morgellons disease patients. And I want to encourage people to continue to look out for more advocacy actions on their way, which are currently happening right now, which include pointing the finger at the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and saying, hey, you guys, admit you screwed up this whole thing and take action right now. So, please check out more Managing Morgellons Lance videos. Just look me up on YouTube and find me on Facebook. And check out the Charles Holman Foundation and everything that they have to offer. visit their website, their YouTube page, their Twitter account, and all the other things that they're involved in. I don't keep track of everything that they do. I'm dealing with my own symptoms, and I'm doing my best to do many things, and most of which are in the background, and it includes going to the police about this. That's right. I've taken these matters to the police, and let's just say they were reluctant to deal with this, and on the one hand, I can't blame them. On the other hand, they are law enforcement, and they have a duty and an obligation, and they are under their oath to serve and protect all people within their jurisdiction. Furthermore, and lastly, I strongly encourage people to check out Brittany on her Managing Morgellons YouTube channel and her Facebook account. Thank you very much, and I hope you all get better. Goodbye.